Britain is the only G7 country whose economy is set to shrink this year, according to the International Monetary Fund's projections. A mix of problems like higher taxes, shortage of workers, and surging gas prices are to blame, along with the impact of Britain's exit from the EU 3 years ago, which is still seen as a unique drag. Brexit has been a nightmare for many companies in the UK. Our correspondent Birgit Maas took a closer look at one of them.
Many more lorries used to pull into this forecourt. Aston Chemicals used to supply all of their clients out of the headquarters in England. But since Brexit, it's been too complicated and too expensive to forward any goods to the EU. Managing Director Danny Loughran was forced to open up a second hub in Poland.
I'm paying 2 lots of customs duties. We're now paying in the UK and in Germany or Poland, rather than just doing everything once when it came in here. So obviously we've had to do a lot more work for no more business.
Aston is working with raw materials for the cosmetics industry. The increased workload means that the company's productivity has taken a hit. And low productivity is something that the British economy as a whole is suffering from. In the medium to long term, Britain will be 4% worse off than if it had stayed in the EU. That's according to official forecasts. So many British business leaders are not surprisingly now asking, what really are the benefits of Brexit? Danny Loughran cannot see any upsides of Brexit for her company or indeed her industry. With regards to the country as a whole, the British economy has recovered more slowly after the pandemic than other comparable economies.
We've had increased uncertainty since the referendum back in 2016. At that point, we saw that business investment as a share of GDP really took a hit in the UK, and it hasn't really recovered, while in other countries it was growing during that period.
Aylesbury is the nearest town to Aston Chemicals. People in the area voted narrowly to leave the EU, but today we could not find many convinced by the realities of Brexit.
There was a lot of promises made, particularly by Mr Johnson, and I don't see many of them have come true. He said we had an oven-ready deal. I haven't seen it.
Brexit is a tragedy. I don't think we're too small to be of any importance anywhere in the world with the situation we're in. The economic situation we're in is the result of Brexit.
We should have stayed in with Europe and work together. Now there's issues with trade and whatnot. So, yeah, my personal opinion, it ain't great.
I knew that everything was going to be tough, but in the long run, we'll be in control. We'll look after ourselves and go from there.
3 years after the UK formally left the EU, one thing is clear: Brexit was always a political project. For many businesses across the country, any economic benefits are hard to find.
All right, let's get more from Birgit Maas, whose report you just saw. Birgit, customs seem to be a big issue there. What other problems has Brexit dealt UK companies?
It's mostly those companies who export in the EU that have really felt a big blow. They're really hit hard by Brexit, and it's what's called non-tariff barriers. So it's all the bureaucracy, all the extra red tape that the Brexiteers ironically want to get rid of, but that enabled particularly small companies to export to the EU seamlessly, like they would export to any other place within the UK, and this has now all stopped. So this is mostly a problem for small companies. Big companies are able to somehow absorb the extra bureaucracy. They've got the legal departments, they've got the accountants, but small companies, for them, it's really, really been difficult. And some had to stop trading with the EU altogether.
So with all these tariffs and this red tape now in existence, how have these companies adjusted?
It's fairly typical what Aston Chemicals, the company you saw in the report, have done. They had to open up an EU hub. So that's what I've heard and read from other small companies. For example, I was also filming in a cheese company a couple of months ago, and they had to do something similar. They were a very small exporter of cheese to the EU. However, it really became completely unsustainable because every small shipment, you've got got to fill in the paperwork. It doesn't really matter whether it's a small piece of cheese or whether it's a container. And for them, this was just not possible. So they had to be basically go in partnership with a bigger company who already has an existing hub into the EU. So that seems to be the trick for many companies. But others had to stop trading with the EU altogether, and other companies have just absorbed the cost.
Brexit continues to be a drag on the UK economy, but as you said in your report, it wasn't an economic, but primarily a political decision. What are those saying that lobbied for Brexit 3 years ago?
The Brexiteers are pointing to some UK economic figures that are beneficial. For example, unemployment is relatively low, which probably also has to do with the fact that there's less workers coming in from the European Union. So that's something that they are seizing on. But generally, they are saying that Brexit will be beneficial for the UK in the long run, that the UK is able to set its own rules, to deregulate where it wants to be, for example, in the city of London, and that will be beneficial for Britain in the long run. But as you said, it's mostly not an economic project. It was always about sovereignty, about independence. So it's been a political project.
DW correspondent Birgit Maas in London. Birgit, thank you.